Moldova is one of Europe's least known countries, often overshadowed by its larger neighbors. Yet in 2025, this small nation is at the center of some of the most pressing questions facing the continent: European integration, energy security, economic development, and the tug-of-war between East and West. To understand where Moldova is headed, we need to look at its history, its present challenges, and the opportunities that lie ahead. Moldova's location has always shaped its destiny. Sandwiched between Romania and Ukraine, it sits at a crossroads of cultures and empires. For centuries, it was part of the Principality of Moldavia, then came under Ottoman, Russian, and Soviet influence. Each period left its mark, creating a layered identity. Today, Moldova is a post-Soviet republic striving to define its future. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought independence, but also instability. Moldova faced severe economic decline, mass emigration, and political struggles. In 1992, the short but intense Transnistria conflict broke out, leaving a separatist region supported by Russia. That unresolved situation continues to shape Moldova's security concerns today. For much of its post-independence history, Moldova was caught between two visions: a pro-European path or closer alignment with Russia. This debate was reflected in its elections, governments, and policies. By 2025, however, the country has clearly tilted toward Europe. In 2022, Moldova was granted EU candidate status, joining Ukraine and Georgia in a major step toward integration. The prospect of joining the European Union is both inspiring and daunting. For many Moldovans, EU membership promises prosperity, stability, and the chance to return to a wider European family. But the process requires deep reforms, from strengthening democratic institutions and fighting corruption to modernizing the economy and ensuring rule of law. The road is long and progress is not guaranteed. Economically, Moldova faces unique challenges. It remains one of the poorest countries in Europe, with a GDP per capita far below the EU average. Agriculture has long been the backbone of its economy, with fertile soil supporting vineyards, orchards, and crops. Moldovan wine, in particular, has ancient roots and international recognition. Yet agriculture alone cannot secure the country's future. Diversification, industrial growth, and digital transformation are essential. At the same time, Moldova has struggled with energy dependence. For years, it relied heavily on Russian gas, which made it vulnerable to price hikes and political pressure. The war in Ukraine disrupted supply routes and exposed just how fragile this dependence was. Since then, Moldova has been rapidly working to connect its electricity grid with Romania and diversify its energy sources, including renewables. By 2025, energy security has become one of the country's top priorities. Migration is another defining issue. Since independence, over 1 million Moldovans have left to work abroad, particularly in the EU and Russia. Remittances from this diaspora make up a significant share of the economy, providing stability but also highlighting the lack of opportunities at home. The government hopes that EU integration, infrastructure development, and investment will gradually encourage more citizens to stay or even return. Culturally, Moldova balances multiple identities. Romanian is the official language, and many Moldovans see themselves as part of a broader Romanian cultural space. At the same time, Russian remains widely spoken, particularly in Transnistria and Gagauzia, an autonomous region in the south. This blend of languages and traditions can be a source of strength, but it can also fuel division if not carefully managed. Transnistria itself remains one of Moldova's biggest unresolved issues. The self-declared republic on the Dniester River is home to a Russian-speaking population and maintains close ties with Moscow. Russian troops are still stationed there, despite repeated calls for withdrawal. In the context of the war in Ukraine, the status of Transnistria has gained renewed attention. While large-scale conflict is unlikely, the situation is a reminder that Moldova's security cannot be taken for granted. Politically, Moldova in 2025 is led by pro-European forces, with President Maia Sandu playing a central role. Her government has pushed for reforms, closer ties with Brussels, and anti-corruption measures. Yet politics in Moldova has always been volatile, and public trust in institutions remains fragile. Opposition parties continue to argue for closer ties with Russia or criticize the government's pace of reform. The upcoming years will test whether Moldova's pro-European orientation is durable or vulnerable to political shifts. One of the key themes for Moldova's future is the balancing act between tradition and modernization. On one hand, Moldova's rural villages, folk traditions, and historic monasteries are symbols of national identity. On the other hand, the country is investing in digital transformation, infrastructure upgrades, and education reforms to prepare for the 21st century. Tourism is another area with untapped potential. Moldova is often overlooked by travelers, but it has much to offer. Sprawling vineyards, underground wine cellars like Craiova and Molestii Maisai, and natural beauty in its countryside. If safety, infrastructure, and branding improve, Moldova could position itself as Europe's hidden gem, especially for cultural and ecotourism. Looking ahead, Moldova faces several key challenges. First, sustaining economic growth in the face of global uncertainty. Second, reducing reliance on remittances by creating opportunities at home. Third, ensuring energy independence while transitioning to green alternatives. Fourth, deepening reforms in justice and governance to meet EU standards. And fifth, maintaining social cohesion in a country where regional, linguistic, and political divides remain. At the same time, there are important opportunities. Moldova's EU candidacy has opened doors for funding, technical assistance, and investment. Its young population, though many have emigrated, is increasingly connected and ambitious. Its diaspora remains engaged and could be a powerful force for innovation, remittances, and cultural exchange. And its geographic position, once a liability, could become an advantage if Moldova successfully integrates with European trade routes. The question of identity will remain central. Some Moldovans strongly support union with Romania, arguing that cultural and historical ties make it a natural step. Others favor maintaining a distinct Moldovan state. While full unification is unlikely in the near term, closer cooperation with Romania is almost certain, especially in energy, infrastructure, and culture. Security will also remain a priority. While Moldova has a neutral constitution and is not a NATO member, it has deepened partnerships with the EU and the United States. In 2025, regional tensions continue to make neutrality difficult to maintain. Moldova will need to carefully balance its commitments while protecting its sovereignty. Ultimately, Moldova in 2025 stands at a crossroads. It is a country with enormous challenges, but also enormous potential. The choices its leaders and people make in the coming years will determine whether it becomes a successful European democracy or remains trapped between East and West. It's important to remember that Moldova's future cannot be predicted with certainty. This video presents an overview of current trends and challenges, but viewers are encouraged to research further, consult multiple sources, and follow developments over time. The story of Moldova is still being written, and it will be shaped by the decisions of millions of ordinary people as much as by governments and international institutions. Moldova may be small, but its story is big, a story of resilience, survival, and the pursuit of a better future. In 2025, as it looks westward while managing its eastern ties, Moldova is not just Europe's least visited country. It is one of its most important test cases for whether small states can find their place in a rapidly changing world. Thanks for watching. What do you think of Moldova's current position?